As fun as it is to watch us here at Night's Watch suffer through terrible media, you know what's even more fun? Good media. And here is a great one that you can dive into right now. It's the graphic novel adaptation of my book, Chronicles of Everfall, Shadow of the Conqueror, Enemies of Self. I hired one of the best artists in the business, Mike S. Miller. The art is fantastic. No expenses were spared. We paid for great colouring, lettering, and of course we put in heaps of our own time to produce the best quality graphic novel we can. This is top tier, and guys, you will genuinely love it. The launch campaign is out. You can get it in collector covers, leather-bound, and I've released the second edition of my novel in the collector edition covers and leather-bound as well. They're only available for a short time. Collector edition, high quality, and of course a really awesome story for you to enjoy. So do secure your copy as soon as you can and enjoy some high quality media as I continue to suffer through horrible media and the occasional good piece of media like this series, House of the Dragon. Welcome back to The Watch, and oh boy, House of Dragons episode 7. Oh, I liked this one. I liked it so much that I wanted to get someone else to join me to talk about it, and I'm joined by my lovely wife, the lady. How are you?
I'm doing great. Now, I'm the only one here this time because I'm the only other one that's watched it.
Yes.
And so we're not excluding anybody else. And we've still got people on staff. I just happen to be the one that's watched it as well.
Exactly. Because House of the Dragons has a bit more graphic content, I'm not going to force people to watch it if they're uncomfortable with that. And so my wife has watched it, though, and I love hearing her thoughts about it. But because this is the first time we've had someone join us on our House of the Dragons video, Dia, what did you think of it? What do you think of House of Dragons so far as a whole?
Well, first of all, I'm loving the costumes. They're absolutely beautiful. They don't look cheap. They look elegant, extravagant, and personalised for each character, which I love when the characters dress in a certain style. Like, you can tell it's them, even from the back.
I just like, the first thing you notice is the dresses. Or I'm like the armour and weapons.
Yes. So this is the other side of it. Because like the queen and the princess, their dresses are always gorgeous.
They do look very good, yeah.
And that they're uniquely them. They have their own colour scheme and their own style each time. On top of that, the characterisation makes sense. They stick to what has been established as their characters, whether they are cowardly or arrogant or self-centered. Like, it's consistent. And I enjoy that. You're not getting whiplash from not knowing what their character's going to do.
I know. So I love the show. It sounds like you're enjoying it.
For the most part, yes.
Yeah. And episode 7, now that we'll dive into this review, my favourite one so far by a long shot. What did you think of episode 7?
Probably not my favourite, but probably second.
Second?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, it would be kind of a balance between this and the episode where they had the feast for me. I really loved that episode. I think that was episode 5.
Yes, I think it was episode 5, and I think that one's probably my favourite.
Well, see, this one, like the scene when everyone comes together and they discuss things in episode 7, I think is probably equally as good as the scene in episode 5. But then there are other moments in this episode that I just really liked. The dragon riding scene. There's, I'll just say the kids scene. Like, I found that impactful and engaging. And so, because it had multiple moments where I was really engaged, this is, my favourite episode. And so, that's one of the things, non-spoiler kind of discussion to begin with. New characters, well, some of these characters were introduced last episode, but they get really fleshed out and put to the forefront in this episode in a way that I'm really engaged and impressed. I'm genuinely impressed because this show is not afraid to kill off characters. And I mean, there were characters introduced in the last episode that I thought, hey, these, I might get interested in them, like Damon's wife. And then she's not here anymore.
I quite liked her.
Yeah. And that shows guts, okay? That a show is willing to introduce interesting characters that might hook an audience. And it's right, you don't even get them. They're gone. But then it's because they have confidence that the other characters that are going to be introduced will engage the audience just as much, and they're doing that. Like one of the children, wow, wow, I'm very intrigued and interested where he's going to go. And so that's really to the show's credit. I had trouble finding any true plot holes or inconsistencies in this episode once again. And this is the thing, right? It shouldn't be too hard to do that. You just pay attention to cause and effect, or what leads into another thing. And it's just so bizarre that House of the Jags is one of the few shows that's doing it.
I know, like, when you asked if I would come and join you, I'm like, I don't know that I have much to say because I couldn't actually think of anything I had a problem with, and I'm so used to that being the main topic. Yeah. And so when I had to think about it, I'm like, oh, well, there's plenty of things I can talk about that I liked.
But that's what we're doing. Like, if it's a good show, we'll talk about what we liked. But yeah, I have very little criticism from like an objective standpoint in regards to consistency or plot holes or character motivations, arcs, depictions of certain things, like if it's the set, armor, weapons. It's all really good. Really good. And so, wow, that's great to begin with. And then there's the characterizations and how engaging the plot is and all of that. And I find that really engaging as well. And, I mean, the action, it isn't an action-heavy show. It's interesting. This is actually soap opera-y, drama-y kind of thing. It's a political drama that's enhanced by the fantasy elements, the dragons, and the action, which I really enjoy.
And the costuming.
Okay. But what's really great about this is that means the action moments have real significance and weight because you understand the context of when these big moments happened. Where contrast is, yes, to Rings of Power, right? There's an action scene in one of the previous episodes where Galadriel trains Numenorians and it has no impact in the plot. It doesn't mean anything. If anything, it makes the Numenorians look more useless and buffoonish, and you could have cut it and the show would be better for it. Contrast it to this, where when action happens, it has huge significance like this one. Oh my goodness.
And consequences will carry forward.
Massive consequences. And so when action breaks out, you're just like, oh, you're on the edge of your seat. Just compare the two, okay? And so, yes, there's lots of politics in it, but that enhances so much. And it makes me like, this show is great. I'm actually enjoying this more than Game of Thrones, honestly. Look, I stopped when it got really, really bad. And I like the writing character work in season 1 is really, really good, but there are elements in House of the Dragon that give me a more biased kind of appreciation for it. There's less nudity, and so, yeah, the weapons and armor are more medieval accurate, and so I enjoy that. The effects look better, the sets look better, and then if the writing can equal Game of Thrones because of these other things, I like it more. And this episode, and I'm not the only one saying it, I think this episode, in terms of the writing and character work and the engagement and the significance and the payoffs and the twist of what happens and things, I think is equaling some of the best Game of Thrones has done, okay? This episode in particular, and that's great.
And they're really good at making you switch back and forth on whose side you agree with. Yeah. Like, all of a sudden you're like, absolutely, they're right. And then you get somebody else's opinion, you're like, no, I go with them. Hold on, they've got a different opinion. What?
Well, see, I've loved Viserys from the very beginning, the king, and I love him more and more, and I feel so sorry for the guy. He just wants his family to get along, and is just doing his best to hold together this sinking boat. Oh, and his life is just torture, but he sticks in there. What a great character. Daemon is as interesting as ever, okay? And then you get new characters that you're engaging. And I'm surprised that I'm starting to like Alicent a lot. I
am too, and it surprised me.
Yeah, so Alicent does something, no spoilers, we'll go to the spoiler thing, right? But she does something that has turned a lot of people off her character. But for me, it was so justified in line with her character. And it was a reflection of her motherly instinct to an extreme degree that it was an expression of how much she cared for her kids. And I kind of like that about her. I know she goes too far, but it's still from a place of extreme protection for her own children. What were your thoughts about the
I would like to come back to that scene when we get to it, actually, because I do have thoughts.
There's lots to talk about. So, wow, I give this episode, I might give it a 10 out of 10. So when my rating for 10 out of 10 is not necessarily, is it better than other, glorious, great works like Lord of the Rings or anything like that. My 10 out of 10 is this as good as this episode or show could be for what it's meant to be? Like, what is it trying to achieve? And I think it achieves it perfectly. And if it achieves that perfectly, what else can you give it apart from a 10 out of 10? What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'm still leaning towards an 8 or 9, just because I liked episode 5 that much better.
Yeah.
But it's still way up there.
Yeah.
Like, it portrayed everything it needed to. It established the characters and their motivations and all sorts of things really, really well.
And look, if there are flaws and everything, it would knock it down to a 9, but that's still really, praiseworthy. I loved this episode so much. So, okay, we're going to get into spoilers now. This is your warning, and we're going to go, not like every single scene, but we're going to jump onto the things that stood out to us that we kind of liked in the episode. And of course, we're going to need to talk about the significant moments as well. The episode opens with the funeral of Damon's wife, and barely anyone says anything in this scene. But I really loved it because you pick up so much from everyone's expressions and who's looking at who. And it just sets the scene that, because also this is the first time that some of these characters have met in a while. Damon has been off doing whatever. And so now he's going to be meeting with his brother after a while. Also, you're thinking, what'll happen there? But last episode, Rhaenyra left.
Yeah, with her family, they're out of the castle.
Exactly. And there are so many. What I love about this show, right? You can understand context by action. You don't need to spell it out. There's not one character here off screen saying, Rhaenyra left after, Sir Strong just killed someone for accusing him of being the father and everything. You know what that means, right? And we know that, right? But that is a big, significant thing, because by her leaving after Sir Strong beat down on Sir Cole for a slight comment, which is basically an admission on his part, everyone was thinking, okay, that kind of confirms our suspicions. Just look at the kids. You don't need much confirmation.
But it was also after his death as well.
Well, no, she left before his death, and then he died later on. Okay. And then his death is on top of that.
She's been gone for a bit longer than just between episodes.
And so this is the first time she's back with the king and everything since all of that's hanging in the air, and you see all the characters look at each other, and it's just like, oh.
So it kind of looks a little bit like timber through some of it and stone through other parts. So maybe, because timber by itself would float.
And look, there's small little things that, of course, mean a lot. The guy speaking, he says something along the lines, salt courses through our, Valerian veins, and it is thick, and ours is true. And he looks at Rhaenyra when he says that. And so, some of the family are aware of it.
Bites and jabs at each other.
Just, it's a great scene. And barely a word is said, which just... it shows the character work that's been done in this show, and in contrast that to, again, Rings of Power, it's night and day. Oh my goodness.
And the boys did a great job in this too.
All the kids did.
Each one of them portrayed their characters really well of, impatience of this is boring, or I'm sad and I have to pretend that this is why.
Yeah.
They all did their facial expressions
and
personality beautifully.
After the funeral, it's kind of like, the gathering after it.
Wake.
There's a wake, yeah. Basically, there's some food, there's some talking now, and really important stuff happens in this scene as well, and you get to contextualize and learn about characters, and this is where we see the two sons of the king, so these are the sons of Alicent, talking about their sister. And it turns out that their sister is not only a bit weird, but she's betrothed to the eldest son.
Yeah, because you don't really get to see the sister much previously. She's kind of been left behind in the story because they've been developing the sons.
Well, if you pay attention to what she says, she's actually prophesying. In the previous episode, when her brother comes into the room, she says, "One eye will shut forever."
Oh, I didn't pick that up at all.
Yeah, and so pay attention to what she's saying here as well. It's not just random gibberish. And so really interesting things there. But this scene, it does multiple things. It kind of contextualizes what's going on with the sister. It lets you know what the older brother kind of feels about everything. He's like, oh, you marry her. And then it also gives us characterization of the younger brother and is like, yeah, I'll do it. It's what needs to be done. And basically...
He's a lot more duty-minded and what's proper. And the older son's just a loose cannon that wants to do his own thing.
And already I'm interested in the younger brother now because he's pretty switched on for his age. And so even before anything big happens with him, this scene and then the scene when he basically gets Otto to, because Otto finds the elder brother drunken and he's like, get up, and gives him a kick, and everything. And you see the younger brother was there that he basically, told Otto what was going on. And I was like, I like this kid. He's on top of things. He's even trying to get his brother to pull his head in.
Not disgrace them too much.
Exactly. And so even from that early on, I was like, I like this guy. And then what he does later on is like, whoa, wow, now I'm really interested.
She kind of has a chat with her son about, obviously they can't mourn their loss, but they need to be understanding of those that have also lost, and so go support your cousin. Like, it was a good family building moment.
She even goes so far to say to not do it to him. Like, I can't remember the exact line, but she's like, don't think about that, or so along those lines. Is that she's trying to now enforce what the son needs to believe.
That there are duties that they need to focus on.
And it's a good line from the son here as well. He says, "I have an equal claim to sympathy," and it's like that's really well written. In terms of trying to find language that sounds a bit more formal for the period, but not overdone or nonsense. They do it really well. Compare it to Rings of Power. They have nonsense lines.
It tries to sound smart, and you just left scratching your head going, I have no idea what they just said.
When I speak, his ears close up, then speak louder. There are so many parts to comment on in this scene because there's the interaction that the king has with Daemon. This is their first interaction in a while. There's the fact that Daemon leaves and then Rhaenyra follows and things. There's the interaction between the son of Rhaenyra and the daughter of Daemon. They hold hands and there's like, I wonder where that might go. They'll probably get betrothed, all right? They're cousins. They're not against anything like that. And then you mentioned as well that Rhaenyra's actual husband is...
melting down and standing in the waves, having a really rough time about all this.
You marry her then. And I was like, I would perform my duty. And so already I'm like, hey, this guy, he seems to know it. Oh, there's an interaction between Daemon and Otto where he says, no matter how fat the leech grows, it always wants for another meal. It's like, we get to know how Daemon feels about Otto. Nothing's changed there. But also, I mean, is Otto a leech? Like, it's just... good character work.
Because he does seem to try to help the kingdom, but he's also very self-interested in his own family and who he perceives to be worthy.
And Alicent all but admits that next episode, where the clubfoot guy says that he would be he wouldn't be impartial, but she's like, he'll be partial to me, and I think that also plays out in this episode as well. So great scene, okay, and that was just again a single scene, and then it moves on to the brother gets a bit drunk, and then someone needs to go down and get the husband who's in the ways, and so just important stuff happens in between the big moments as well.
And there's a scene shortly after where the father of the wife, who's the lord of the rock or whatever it is, and his wife have a good chat, and I really liked it.
We'll get to that. That's a bit later, but I'm glad they had that chat because when all the looks were happening... during the wake, that father goes to speak with Rhaenyra's son, and it's the second-born son, and he says, your brother will inherit the king and everything, but you will inherit Driftmark, and this is your thing, and the son says he doesn't want it. And at that point, I was wondering, hang on, he should know these aren't his kids, right? And I was almost ready to criticize it, because if he is not aware of something so blatantly obvious and a rumor that's spread everywhere, that's a plot hole, and then they address it in this very scene that you mentioned.
But even that scene between the grandfather and grandson, where he's like, I wouldn't want it, And he's looking at him like, why not? Why wouldn't you want this plot? And he's like, because that means everybody's dead.
Yeah, I mean, from his perspective, I could see why he says that. I mean,
he's just been faced with 2 major deaths that are related to his family. And he's talking to his grandfather, who would have to be dead for him to inherit. And he's like, I don't want that, because that's even more people that I care about gone.
Yeah, and I mean, what's interesting about all this setup, right? I'm actually a bit on Alicent's side, but at the same time, I feel so sorry for Rhaenyra's children. Like, they didn't choose. Exactly, they didn't choose to. They were just born, and now they're illegitimate, but not officially illegitimate. They're still trying to claim that these are but
the heirs, they're supposedly.
What can they do about it? And it seems like they're good kids too.
They're trying really hard to, live up to,
it's
their roles and to learn things, and they just can't help.
It's going to be heartbreaking to see what happens with those two. But, I mean, look, I'm invested. It's so weird. There's an interesting difference I have with, I don't know, is it just Game of Thrones, House of Dragon things to other shows? Other shows, I get so invested in certain, if there's great character work, I get so invested that seeing them go through terrible things is almost too painful for me to continue. I had to give up Downton Abbey in my first watch through because too many awful things were happening to characters I love, like Mr. Bates. I friggin' love Mr. Bates.
Yeah, and I think that's my only holdback with this show, is that there aren't characters that I just simply love and want to barrack for and want everything to go right for, and am heartbroken when they don't, because a lot of these people often deserve the rotten things that happen to them. But their characters are so well written that it all fits.
Yeah.
But they're still not that good person like Anna or Mr. Bates.
Viserys, the king, he's the good person for me. I love him.
He tries, but he's also very willingly ignorant and won't actually put people in their place when they're being rebellious and idiotic.
He does when he's pushed to an extreme.
When he's pushed, but I feel like as a king, he should be standing up and saying, you're out of line, pull your head in, or you can get out. And he doesn't often do that.
But I understand why. He's a peacemaker. And I get it. I love him for it, And I get it. I get what you're saying. Yeah. What you're saying is valid. But that makes me like him more. But the thing is, though, I also kind of seem to be aware that this is Westeros, right? Yes. And I expect awful things to happen. And so it doesn't hit me as with as much dread. I mean, because I had the same experience that I had with Downton Abbey watching Yellowstone. I was starting to really like Yellowstone and get invested in the characters, and something awful happens, and I'm like, oh, I see they finally get through it. They're at a point of peace, and I was like, something awful is going to happen again. It's just the nature of the show, and I had to give myself a break from it. In this, I don't know. I don't have that reaction because I'm almost aware of it. I'm expecting it to happen. And I'm engaged. I'm always
wanting. And half the time they deserve it.
Yeah. And so I'm almost like wanting the crazy stuff to happen because it's just like, it's on now. I mean, it's an odd observation, but it's to the show's credit that I can more easily absorb horrible things compared to other shows.
It's kind of the nature of the show, isn't
Though,
it?
I do wonder if, because the boys, though, because that's what led us on that discussion, that I feel sorry for those boys, and I just wonder what awful thing.
What they're going to do to them next.
Gosh. You're right. The next scene is the parents talking about it, and the mother just says it plainly.
She's like, you know these aren't your blood. Like,
yeah.
You're talking all about, the inheritance and all this sort of thing, but why should they inherit? They're not related to us.
And, I see both sides in this discussion, and I can sympathise because his answer is, blood doesn't matter, a name matters. And in that, he's basically wanting his name, his family name, to continue. And, I have a stronger connection with the idea that, these children are the result of, there's part of me in them. They are my offspring and everything. And then when it gets to grandchildren, you still get that. But I do see a point, eventually that gets diluted to the point where you're a part in your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren, right? It's so tiny, doesn't matter.
But I also love their conversation about her right to the throne, and he is continually harping on, and she finally pulls him out and says, look, I gave up on this years ago, what did she say, generation ago. And this is not something that is important to me. The only thing that is driving this is your pride and ambition. And they finally have a conversation about give it up. I'm not interested in ruling. I've given up all hope of that. We need to look to the future.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, there is one thing that the show is probably not intended to demonstrate, and it's how awful being the king of Westeros would be. Like, but they actually do say in the show, like, you know, that seat is the most dangerous seat in all the realm, and they're talking about the Iron Throne, right? And everyone who's king ends up being like their lives ruined and just goes to hell. Like, look at what poor Viserys at start of the series and where he's at now. He's almost a zombie, the poor guy. And to the point where it's hard for me to understand why anyone would want that throne. He's like, yeah, power, glory, riches, and all that stuff. But still, they've got eyes, don't they? They see what happens to people on that throne. It's more justified with the context of the show for people to... No one wants that thing.
The only thing they look at is that one conqueror in their history, and they all want to be like that one person, even though everybody is miserable that is connected to being an heir or on the throne.
But look, you know, the desire for power and prestige and riches and everything is, of course, very common in the human condition. And so, you know, still.
But I just love that they added her perspective of like, I'm over that idea. Like, it's no interest to me. No matter how many times you say it's for me, this is all only for you when you keep rehashing getting onto that throne.
This is one of the actual conversation. This is actually what I've been missing from the Game of Thrones reviews, is having a conversation about the show. And so I love having my wife here that I can have that with someone, because it brings up an interesting thing that I dislike about Rhaenyra. Because I think about what are the reasons why Rhaenyra feels she deserves the throne. All it is entitlement and power and because you would think like there's a couple of different perspectives on this. Like, sometimes the person who least wants the throne would be most worthy for it, because they'd treat it with the respect in terms of because they understand the actual magnitude of that role a bit better. But then there's the other side where perhaps people who want the throne because all the other options are terrible and they know they'll do a better job and they are doing it for honorable reasons, right? Rhaenyra, if she opened up her eyes a bit and realized, because she's already shown terrible leadership skills, horrible choices, she has not shown loyalty or dedication to her position by having illegitimate children, undermining the security of her claim and the realm, pushing things into war and chaos and all those things, right? She would be an awful ruler. And then she had the option to have a wonderful, happy life with someone who loved her, right? But she would need to give up her claim to the throne. Now, I'm not saying it isn't unrealistic for a person to do this. I think a lot of people would say, but it's my right, you know. And that's what Rhaenyra essentially says. But that makes me dislike her a bit even more, because the reasons for her wanting it is because of essentially, is it greed? Is it
well,
entitlement?
I think it's explored a little bit when she has the conversation with Daemon near the end. Mm-hmm. And so it might be something worth coming back to when we get to it, because she actually discusses what they would bring. Yeah. What her perspective was of what the realm needs them to bring to it. Okay,
that'll be good to look at. Because from that perspective, all right, she isn't doing it because I'm going to be a great king and I want to do good things, I want to lead the people to. Her reasons were, it's mine, essentially.
And that's all we've seen until that conversation. So I actually found the conversation with Daemon quite interesting, because it kind of gave a little bit of what she's wanting to bring to the position.
Okay, well...
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. All right, so, man, look how dark this is. It's better on certain screens, but this is almost unwatchable.
The TV screen was quite visible, but...
Look how dark this is. You can barely see it. So, I actually don't remember the exact words what he said.
So, I know she asked, you know, did you love her? I'm sorry about your wife, kind of thing. And he said, well, we were happy enough. And she was like, that's better than
that
most
in itself is a great
get.
achievement. Yep. But you're saying there was a conversation, something about...
Not until near the end.
Oh, near the end.
The conversation I was referring to, right near the end.
Yeah. So basically, this is the part where Rhaenyra's like, let's hook up, you know?
I'm not a child anymore. You can't use that as an excuse.
He didn't really use an excuse last time. You don't know...
Well, he used it just before, and he's like, you were a child. He's like, well, I'm not now.
Yeah. She is still married, but of course she has the arrangement. And does she now want a child that would more definitively have the bright blonde hair?
I wouldn't put it past her as her motivation at this point.
Yeah.
Because, it's been one of the things that keeps getting thrown in her face, that they obviously don't have the blonde hair of both their so-called parents.
I know, that's the thing. You might get away with them having pale skin because at least one of the parents have pale skin, but both having the blonde hair is like, and they have dark brown hair. I was like, you can't tell me no one would just, raise an
eyebrow about that one, yeah.
Well, of course, everyone has. That's
yes.
that's the context of the show. And even those people who are trying to say, oh, they're legitimate, they know that they're not. They're just coping. Even the king knows it.
Because it's already shown that it's a very strong characteristic of the family that it comes through. Even, I think, was her mother light-haired as well? I can't remember.
I'm pretty sure her mother was. I mean, there's a couple of unions that have the classic Valyrian style or Targaryen look replaced by, darker hair or something like that.
And then generally the kids are still often light-haired. Mm-hmm. So it's a very strong family trait that when it's not there, it stands out. Because even with Alicent, her children still have bright blonde hair.
Yeah.
Very pale blonde hair, even though one of the parents does not.
Yeah, usually the Targaryen genes are a bit more dominant. But there's the odd occasion when they get,
As in
replaced.
Her children.
Yes. Because, she is, Rhaenyra is a Targaryen, all right?
Yes.
But her children don't get that. So here's a scene where Alicent's second-born son, and I forget his name, but...
I was just going to say, my main problem with this is I can very rarely remember the names of everybody.
Aemon? I might be Aemon. I can't remember. Because his brother is an Aegon. And so there's so many Aegons.
I just keep getting confused with names. But younger, pale blonde-haired boy.
But man, I love this scene where, they already contextualized he really wants a dragon. And so when he was out and you didn't see why he was out in just, walking over things. My first thought is is he spying? It's no, he's after a dragon.
When you hear the dragon is when it clicked for me.
Mm-hmm.
Before that I was like, oh, he's not going to come across the two of them. That would just be weird. And then I hear the dragon, I'm like, oh, this fits his character perfectly. And look, it's a ballsy move. The dragon nearly he
flies
knows
him.
It's riderless.
Yep. And he commands him, and Valyrian, Targaryen genes and things where the dragon responds. But it also
And he knows the phrases and the terminology used because he's watched the others all get training their dragons.
Exactly. And then the dragon also seems to test him a bit because all right, I won't burn you to a crisp. And look, you're getting on my back. Let's see if you can hold on.
Straight up, vertically, straight down.
And look, it reminded me a bit of How to Train Your Dragon, which is a good thing because that is a phenomenal film. I love it. And it's a bit more of a realistic, serious, How to Train Your Dragon. But also this scene was just a joy to watch it. In terms of its verticality, you felt like you were in the air by some of the angles that they picked here.
And I really loved how they had the saddle and everything all there, ready for different positions, or whether they would need to be...
He's barely holding on. Sorry, I'm going through the scene. But yeah. What were you saying, hon?
But it's already thought out, the saddle, on how they would need to put their legs in, where they would need to hold on tight, where they'd need to crouch down. There are no weird bits that would get in the way of riding a dragon in any direction.
Yeah. I mean, look at this. See, the dragon flying through the air. Oh, look, it's too dark, but it's still, when you are able to make it out, it looks brilliant. What a great scene. And look, because it's so dark, they should have learned this from the thing. That might knock it down for a 9 for me because some of this is just,
unwatchable on some screens.
Yeah.
But this scene, I was like, oh, I really like this kid. Kind of dropped off in the next couple of scenes or so a little bit.
We got to talk about that. I mean, it shows that he's not necessarily the nicest, but there are elements that made me like him even in that scene. And so we better jump to it because right after it, everyone sees he's flying a dragon and then he returns.
Kids all wake up. There's people going, who's on the dragon?
Exactly. And they know that, like, if someone's riding the dragon, the only way that would be possible is someone has bonded themselves to the dragon, because the dragon will only let the person... exactly.
One person to ride them.
And so they come in, what were you doing? And there's like, it's him. Yes, it's me. And then Vhagar is my mother's dragon. And look, this
little exchange was well justified.
It was well justified. It's a bit heartless, but it's like, your mother's dead. You didn't act soon enough. But also, I want people to remember that, I think it's Aemon. He was bullied by all the other boys for not having a dragon.
Absolutely.
So
he was really...
His resent is a bit justified in that. And it's almost like a bullied person fighting back a bit against their bullies. Not the daughters. The daughters didn't really do anything. But
That's the part that I had the biggest problem with.
They did hit him first.
However, he also did have to come back, well, if it was your dragon, you should have stepped up and claimed it.
The thing is, though, that was obviously the intention, but it's right. Like he did skip proprietary and break the order of things by doing it without permission, or it's clear by context. Everyone expecting that the daughter would then be getting this dragon, and
he tried his luck.
Exactly, and they can't do anything about it now. Once that bond is made, it seems like by the context of the show, you can't replace it until the dragon rider is dead.
The dragon is loyal to that rider.
Exactly. And so I could definitely see why the daughters are really upset about this. But I could also see why he did that. I mean, because the other thing, he could justify it that this daughter has an egg that hasn't hatched yet. I don't even know if he has an egg. I think he does, but maybe it's not. I don't know.
I think he gave up on waiting for it to hatch.
Maybe. Because I couldn't even remember if he had
He might not even have been given one.
Yeah, exactly. Because from the context of that pig scene, it seemed like he didn't even have an egg.
Yeah.
And so his thought process could be, she still has hopes of getting a dragon. I'm basically...
I was never presented
exactly.
an option.
And so I should be the first one to have an option to try and inherit. And this is not just a dragon, it's like the biggest and oldest dragon in Westeros, except for the one that's missing. There's like, what dragon that's missing, they mentioned.
Yeah, but this is the biggest one that they have with a rider.
Yep. And so all of that, you can see exactly why the kid did it. And I can even see why he's acting like a jerk here, because he was teased and bullied before. And now he feels empowered by his achievement and is like, bad luck. What are you going to do about it? Try and bully some more? And they attack him, and he fights back, and is not putting up with...
But he extremely fights back.
Yeah. Well...
Though granted, somebody does pull out a knife.
I actually think he only answers with equal force that's put against him, but it's he antagonizes them, which pushes the others to go further and further.
Exactly. He pushes it.
No, picking up the rock might have been... But he didn't hit anyone with the rock. He just threatens them with the rock. But look at this scene.
He pulls himself up when he's got the rock, and he's like, okay, I don't need to hit unless it's absolutely necessary.
You're right. And so that makes me like... even though he goes too far, I think we can all agree, you can justify a lot of what he's doing somewhat, maybe not fully, but... And it makes me like him even more. The writers didn't make him go full tyrant here. Because, they say this was my dragon, right? And he says, maybe your cousins could find you a pig to ride. He's lashing out because that's what's done to him, okay? But then it would suit you, all right? There's a jab that, and that causes her to attack him. He throws her down. And so... He didn't hit her yet.
Girl, yeah.
Yeah, and look, he's older, so it makes sense. And then she comes in to putts. Like, it's the escalation in this scene is so logical. Where one daughter tries to get him, he doesn't punch. He's like, "You're trying to push me. I'll throw you down. Stop trying to assault me." The sister sees that you just attacked my sister, so that in her mind makes her justified to punch him. And so she decks him, but he gets up and just wallops her back. And I do believe, don't hit a woman or anything like that, except in defense of your own person. And so...
He wasn't overly threatened at this point. Like, he probably could have walked away with them following and gone to near an adult who could have handled it. So, he didn't handle it brilliantly, but you can understand how each step
Well,
escalates.
exactly. Look what he says here. He does it. He says, "Come at me again, and I'll feed you my meat," which is basically saying, "Don't you dare hit me or attack me." Okay.
Right.
And then he would be willing to stop it there because he feels now tit for tat. Come at me again, I'll feed you my dragon. Leave it right there. And then one of the strong boys goes to attack him. You can see why. He just hit the girls. And so he's trying to wail on him. And he gives him a good solid boot and knocks him down. Older boy, of course, would be able to do that. But we've also seen these boys getting trained. And so he knows how to handle himself.
They've been told not to hold back against each other. And so that's what they're doing. They're doing what they've been trained to do.
And, these, punches, right, are choreographed better, a fight scene between kids, than the fight scene in Rings of Power between Galadriel and the Númenóreans. The hits are angled and positioned, and the reaction of who's getting hit make it look like they land with true force and power, and it's like you feel it when you see the hits. You're like, oh, right? That is that is better done than the Rings of Power fight scene with adults, and this is kids. It's a better fight scene. I can't believe it. And not only that, there is a story that's being told in this fight scene, the escalation, the insults, okay? The expression of hurt and you bullied me, and then that he comes back with lines against that maybe that get a pig for you. And so it's referencing the past, and it's developing the character in terms of his confidence. This fight scene there's so much happening here. Of course you're going to get engaged. Think about what was being said in Rings of Power, or is Galadriel just showing off? And she's not even actually teaching the Númenóreans anything useful. In fact, she's just showing them how awful they are. And so it doesn't even achieve what the scene was trying to achieve in Rings of Power. And this achieves so much.
Yeah, each one is building up future resentments that you can see coming in. Those girls didn't have a lot of contact with those boys previously.
Yeah.
They had probably only seen them on royal visits and special occasions.
You're absolutely right. And the boys, the strong boys, okay, they step forward to defend the girls.
Right.
And so after this, the girls will feel more endeared towards Rhaenyra's kids. And then when Rhaenyra marries Daemon, they're essentially stepbrothers and sisters. But they're going to be betrothed and everything. But they'll be far more willing to accept this. Look at the build-up, the holding their hand, the defense here that they step in to try and protect the daughters. And it's from a fight scene. And so story can be told. A kid's fight scene. Story can be told in fight scenes. And then it's really impressive, right? And so then one of the strong boys pushes him down, and they start wailing on him and just start beating him.
Fists flying everywhere.
And so now this is really escalating, but it's a logical escalation. You see how it gets there. But he fights back. He kicks one of them off. So there's where he boots one, and then he pushes a girl aside into the other girl, and one of the boys were already, I think, knocked aside, and then he comes. So even the recovery is logical, right? He stops one, and it's a smaller kid. So basically, even holding the kid by the throat, the kid's still trying to attack him.
Yeah, and he uses his reach, that he's got more reach than the little kid.
And he picks up a rock and basically is saying, stop it, all right? But his version of stop is you will die screaming in flames, just as this is where he really sticks it, just as your father did. And then he calls him just flat out. Now, when you're in a fight like this, okay, just the emotion of what happens, you resort to some of the cruelest, meanest things you can sometimes to just make the enemy essentially hurt, okay? And so he grabs the lowest hanging fruit, the most obvious fruit, throws it in their face, and then the youngest boy is like, my father's still alive, what do you mean? And it's just, sorry, the scene right here with the blood on the kid, it's just heartbreaking. And then he doesn't know Lord Strong, calling the other brother Lord Strong. It's just, whoa. And so that is such an insult, such a hurt.
And so he knows he's really been pushing this. He's not trying to de-escalate at all. He's going full
Well, It's interesting. This moment is taunting because he's just been wailed on, and it's a reaction. It's an attack.
Or attack him at once.
Exactly.
He managed it.
It's an attack as much as the physical attacks were, but this is a verbal one that cuts even deeper. Okay. There were moments in which he was actually trying to stop it in an overly aggressive way, but he says, "Do it again, and I'll feed you to my dragon." That's the threat, saying, "Stop it, or I'll."
He does.
So that was an attempt to stop, not in the best way, but he actually did attempt to stop it. Okay, so he's not a complete villain in this scene. But I like that they had that much care, and then I also like that they didn't make him completely innocent either. He is a flawed kid who's sticking it to the people who bullied him in the past, and so you said, "I'm going to get a pig," well, I'll call you a bastard. And so, of course, that escalates it. And the knife gets pulled. And then, we know what happens. But he fought off a knife attack then. He dodged it. Like, that's actually... He's got moves, this boy, right? Knocks him down. And then one of the boys throws...
throws sand in his eyes because he's...
Exactly, but he's threatening with the rock here, and so you can understand why the sand
gets... There's one on the ground, and he's holding the rock up.
Look, to me, this shot here looks like he's hesitating a bit. It's
I feel like he's holding off, realising that hitting the boy with the rock would be too far, but...
It is a threat. He's saying, don't push me.
I will do this if I have to.
Yeah, don't push me to this level. And then...
The girls have realised it's all a bit much now.
Yep, and so the other boy grabs a knife, and then in the eye, he can't see. The younger one just gets a slash in there, and we don't want to show the blood. So, I mean, what a powerful scene. What a great fight scene. And for kids. And so, of course, the Kingsguard comes in going, "What's going on?" And then it leads to, this scene. This scene here.
So he rips into all the soldiers and stuff like, where on earth were you when my son was attacked?
So much happens in this, and it's all brilliant. Yes. I mean, this freeze frame that we have here is when Alicent is told that the eye won't be recovered. And the delivery, the acting, like, she shows true horror. Like, true horror, and almost... She can't contain herself. Look at this, where she's just like, no. Brilliantly acted, but it sets up everything because this is a mother who's... And Viserys there, oh my goodness, it's just like, oh no. Of course, he's so heartbroken that his son, lost an eye, but also what's shown in this delivery, he knows where this is going. It's just like, oh, crap.
So, all right, let's redirect a little bit. Where were the soldiers? How is it possible that this was able to happen with no adult around?
This is actually Alicent saying this to Aegon, the son. It's like, where were you? You were supposed to protect your brother.
Well, he was also addressing the soldiers, and they're like...
Yeah, he was.
It was kids that did it. Like, it's not like it was an assassin.
So Alicent is enraged. And, I mean, you can... Like, our daughter got a cut on her face one time, and it's just like... an
injury to your child where you expect them to be safe and taken care of, let alone something permanent.
Something this extreme.
Eye.
I know.
Yes,
the eye's not
fly into a rage.
The eye's not.
Understand the motherly instinct straight away.
Exactly. The eye is not coming back, and then this episode got me to make sounds, audible sounds of reaction, like whoa, woo, literally that. Just from people entering a scene. And it happened here when Rhaenyra arrives, and also when the other parents arrive, the Valerian, the Lords of Driftmark, those people. When they arrive, because they're all involved in all of this, and it just, the tension that builds when they enter, I was just like, this is crazy. And then, the son tells his mother, why did they attack? And he says, he called us bastards. And so... This is extreme because this is one of the first times it's been said just flat out in the open like that. And look at Rhaenyra here. She's like, oh crap, I got to deal with this in extreme, denial. Otherwise the rumors can just go nuts.
I need to make this a treasonable type of thing so that it does not get spoken again.
But this is crazy, right? She actually, I actually feel she plays a card here, which is... a bit crazy, Because the thing is, she knows it's true, right? But she claims that this slander is high treason. Now, if you know anything about this world setting, right, the penalty for high treason is
death.
Instant death.
Yeah. So this is now threatening the son with no eye, basically, because he's the one that said it, and so then it needs to be pushed forward.
Who told him, right? And so, poor Viserys, this is a regrettable incident, and Alicent's like, in accident, he brought a blade to an ambush. He meant to kill my son.
And this is where you can see her point of view, like...
She thinks it's attempted murder.
Rocked up to greet her son. One of them had a knife on him.
And so Rhaenyra needs to counter that. It was my sons who were attacked and forced to defend themselves. Vile insults were levied against them. It's like, what insults?
Like he couldn't have figured that one out.
He's just tried to settle things, the poor guy. And then she says, because that's right, they whispered it to her. And so now she's saying it out. The legitimacy of my son's birth was put loudly to question. And so what she does here, this is the highest of treasons, okay? So that's an extreme escalation of the situation. Because whoever is responsible for, spreading this horrible slander would be put to death. And then by her claiming it's high treason and then getting the king to try and weasel out who told the son that they were bastards, right? Would put them on the chopping block. And I really feel Rhaenyra is expecting that it was Alicent that told them. And by getting the sons to admit that it's Alicent, it is essentially, this is her play to try and get Alicent killed. And so I think even if it wasn't, Alicent has a justifiable reaction to realize that B-word, female dog, you're trying to get me killed. And so if you're wanting to find out why Alicent got pushed to such a level at the end of this, Alicent probably rightly feels that Rhaenyra just tried to get her killed by a political machination maneuver. And it was all up to the sons to realize that if I say it's my mum that said this, she's probably going to get executed.
So this boy's thinking as quickly as he possibly can. And I kind of like his response when he finally figures it out.
The answer was powerful. And so, I question the boys so we might find out what, from whom they heard such slanders. And that's Alicent even. That was Rhaenyra that says that. Oh, my goodness.
And she's like, and I was just up and about because I couldn't sleep.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And look at Alicent. She's like, oh, crap, this could go bad. And so she tries to deflect it back as like, where's the boy's father? Meaning, Rhaenyra's children, which is not their real father, but, and it's like,
her husband.
And, of course, he's, like, drunk and
off
whatever.
Somewhere.
But, so, the youngest boy, who's Austin and I, says that it was his brother that told him. Now, think about this, right? It deflects the question from him, but he doesn't like his brother, and his brother's an idiot. And so if he can get his brother out of the way...
And he's already shown, like, even if it doesn't go to the extreme level of execution, his brother can at least be pushed aside as being a drunk moron, whereas it would be intentional if the Queen said it. And so he's kind of assessed the situation and go, well... It would be logical for him, and who cares, really?
I mean, look, because even Viserys looks to Alicent here, because the son's looking to her and is like,
About ready to go, no.
The tension here. And then he says it was Aegon, his brother, and look at Aegon's reaction, right? He's like, me? He's like, I didn't say that. But then Aegon's response, right? Because, so Viserys goes, and you boy, who told you? Aegon's response is actually, I think, he wasn't aware at how, like, politically, like, powerful and savvy the response was. I think he's actually just answering honestly, but the fact that he says it is probably the best answer he could have given. And it's like...
It saved his life, really.
I'm not sure they would have executed him.
No, the king wouldn't have done it.
But Alicent maybe, because Rhaenyra will probably demand that.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, his answer is... we know, Father. Everyone knows. That's essentially him saying, no one told me. It's bloody obvious.
Yeah.
And that's the get out of jail card right there, because you're right. And that saves anyone from culpability of, spreading the slanderous rumor. And then he's just saying,
well, look at him.
Look at him. But that is also like such, it's the first time anyone basically says it so openly. It's like, you can just look at them.
Except in private.
Yeah, except in private, but this is in front of everyone. Yes. And so, I mean, Viserys is just like, oh, crap. And his only response is like, if anyone, and he looks at Alicent when he says this, if anyone questions the legitimacy of Rhaenyra's children, I will have their tongue. And so, I mean, yeah, look, Viserys, right? That's a very powerful thing. He's had it, okay? And so when people say he's not strong, when pushed, and this is consistent, when pushed, he responds with strength a lot of the times. And this one, he's just trying to stop a civil war breaking out. And this is what he feels is the best, only option here. And it's like, look at him, he says, we're family. Can we just stop squabbling, basically? Oh my God, all of this is so good. But then Alicent, of course, isn't justified because, your son, my king, has lost an eye. I demand redress. And then he says, do not allow your temper to guide your judgment. But, of course, she's incensed. And she demands the eye of one of Rhaenyra's children. And then she says, and I'll give him something like along the lines, I'm paraphrasing.
I'll let him choose which
I'll give him the mercy of choosing which eye, a mercy or something that my own son didn't get. Yeah. And look, extreme, okay? Too far. Obviously too far. You can understand why. But also, by the way, an eye for an eye type of justice is something that was far more common back in the day, and many people would think is a fair and just kind of thing. Especially like Rhaenyra is she's saying this to the perpetrator, the person that literally cut out the eye, right? Which was too far. No one should have brought a knife, and so we saw how that thing was escalating, but still, slicing out a knife. If there was, say, a criminal on the street, right, that jumped someone and he tried to defend, and in the process of defending, the criminal got shot off and cut out the eye, that criminal will probably be executed. But just having the criminal's eye plucked out as will you, as punishment, get done to you what you did to someone else, most people would think would be perfectly just, okay?
They already show in one of the earlier episodes with Daemon going through and saying, okay, you're a thief, your hand gets chopped off, you're this, you get this happens, that their justice is already very brutal. And
so Alicent is also looking at this from a number of places, right? This is not only her son, so she's going to be more aggressive and she wants a harsher penalty to the perpetrator just because it's her son. It's also the prince of the realm, okay, which she feels, even more serious punishment should be given to the perpetrator. And she's not playing into account that the perpetrator is also a prince of the realm. And, not heir to the throne, it was the younger one that did it, but still. It's her nephew as well, isn't it? By marriage, it's her
step-grandchild?
Yes, step-grandchild. The family tree of this thing.
It's so twisted and, yeah.
The thing is, though, okay, what I'm trying to explain here, from Alicent's perspective, what she demands in the context of this world is actually completely legally valid.
Just not a great idea to
not a good one.
Family member.
It's not merciful, but I can also understand she's pushed so far and everything like that. And holy crap, if it wasn't, say, a family member, if my child got their eye cut out by some random kid that he got in a fight with, I would be incensed. Whoa, boy.
If your kid had been jumped at school by four other kids and one of them brought a knife and your kid lost an eye.
Holy crap, I would be seeing red.
Yeah.
I would want severe punishment to that kid. But also, then I would have to try and temper myself and the Christian teaching come in and try and look for ways to forgive and other things like that. But that feeling of justice that you initially get.
That initial feeling would be really strong. And then you go and see the other mother and she's like, what the heck, mate? It's a kid. And you want to take his eye out in retaliation for him being dumb? All kids are dumb.
Okay.
And that's kind of what she's kind of, you can see it at her face processing, like, no, your son was involved in this too. And she's trying desperately to block access to her son.
Yeah, and the thing is, Alicent later admits that what she did was wrong. She says, when Otto is speaking with her, it's like, I acted emotionally, I made a fool of myself, and everything like
This was not befitting my station.
and everything. Those are all statements that she says, if things played out again, I wouldn't have done that, okay? Now, it's interesting. It's not necessarily saying that she feels the desire to take the other kid's eye wasn't justified. She didn't say I was wrong in my... She's saying it was just... It looked bad and it was poor and everything. So, how regretful is she? But that is pretty clear that if she had her, senses around, she wouldn't have gone so far. So she does regret it, at least in that sense. Okay? And so this does explain that what happens here, even she feels is inappropriate, and she's just incensed and emotional and stuff. And she orders Sir Criston Cole to go get the eye. And what's he supposed to do is like, I'm sworn to protect you, my lady.
The king says no. And she's like, you're sworn to me. Like, I'm sworn to protect you.
And
not to attack a child is these kind of unsaid words.
Gosh. But also this, right, shows how much authority that Alicent has, right? She doesn't get away with it, but the fact that she was willing to just order it and supersede the king, and the king doesn't punish her for it, shows how much authority she has. I mean, yes, they obey the king, but as he declines further...
Either way, like, he might have had to have really gotten other guards involved if she was obeyed. Because,
look, the king says, stay your hand, and she's like, no, you are sworn to me. And so... the clash of, authority there just shows you how far Alicent has come in that. And then he says, I'm sworn to you as your protector, my queen, not as your, executioner or punisher or whatever like that. And so Criston Cole, his hands are a bit tied there. But, and so, yeah, she grabs the knife from Viserys and just goes to get it herself. And then, of course, Rhaenyra's in the way.
But this scene is also interesting that everybody, pretty much, anybody that tries to get involved gets stopped.
Yes, like, even the leader of the Kingsguard, he comes in, and Cole is about to step in, and then Daemon stops him. No one interrupts. And look, the Kingsguard is like, no one get involved. Because basically, if they get involved, right, and they harm either one, the heir to the throne or the queen, your own head, so just don't touch it.
And so even the king is like, oh, I don't know, I want to touch this one.
Oh my goodness.
So he's kind of letting them duke it out.
Yeah, and... Rhaenyra tries to say, now everyone sees you for what you truly are. But what Alicent says is powerful as well. It's like, like, I have done everything that I was meant to do, my duty, and you flaunt it and everything and all that stuff. And it makes it boil over. And her resent, while you flout all to do as you please. Poor Viserys.
Viserys is only giving orders to the queen, who is ignoring him. Yeah. But he hasn't told any of the guards to step in and remove the knife. He's just sort of shouting at his wife, saying, stop.
And look, where is duty, where is sacrifice is trampled under your pretty foot again. Because this is the other thing, right? Remember, I mean, these poor kids, right? But they're not legitimate heirs because they were born out of wedlock and everything. And so... all of that plays into the injustice that Alicent feels. But then her father's like, release the blade, Alicent. Yeah, and look, look at her. Like, you flaunted everything, and now you take my son's eye. The ultimate kind of injustice. That yes, Alicent went too far, but I sympathise with her, and.
I think she's really developed as a character, and as a person, she's kind of found her own feet and is not afraid anymore. Because she was very meek when she first came in, and she was kind of would do whatever she was told. And now she kind of realizes that she can stand up for herself, and she will.
Well, that's what essentially Otto says, and I love Otto's expression here. So she slashes the arm, and everything dies down, and then the son goes, "Fear not, mother, it was a fair trade. I lost an eye, but I received a dragon."
Should have said that 10 minutes ago.
I'm not sure that would have de-escalated
Probably
at that point.
not.
He had to wait for the right moment, the right pause.
It was a great spot to put it. But it was just like, maybe that would have been a good thing to take into account in this situation, that he actually... The situation all started because of the dragon.
This expression from Otto is just like so damn proud. Look at him, he's just like, my boy. Right there, he's just...
My girl.
He's even got a smirk. He's got the slightest smirk there. He's proud of Alison and is proud of his grandchild as well. And Alison's starting to realise, like, okay, yeah, I'm...
Maybe a bit too far right there.
Just a bit, Alison. Wow, what a flippin' amazing scene, you know? It's like, this show, I'm loving it.
I kind of feel like in this whole scene, though, the one thing that doesn't come into play with the relationships is Damon and his daughters. Like, it never even gets brought up of...
Well, they got hit, but granted, that's a slide and everything. But they're not the main players of what happened, like the knife and the slash and the injury and things. And it's like everyone kind of forgot about the dragon because they were focusing on the eye. And so when the son, I think it's Amon, brings it up, is like, yeah, I mean, fair trade. And that's what Otto essentially says, like, he's right. The trade was fair. In fact, it was a worthy trade 1,000 times over. They have the strongest, most powerful dragon in their family now.
Yeah.
And we've already kind of talked about that. Alison actually does admit that, yeah, that was wrong. Shouldn't have done it.
Inappropriate. Shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, well, she says, like, I lost composure. And everyone's saying I'm crazy because she assaulted the princess.
Tried to assault a prince.
So, yeah, she understands. But then Otto's like, but you showed a strength I thought you didn't have. Like, Otto's just like, my girl.
And, like, he hasn't been around for a while because he was sent away. And so all of a sudden he's seen his daughter thrive and become a gutsy woman and won't be...
And assert her authority, even challenging the king's authority. And she technically... Look, she was superseded, but she got away with it instead of not getting punished. That shows how much authority she has. And as the king declines even more, she's in control. Whoa. There's, the follow-up scene with... the next big important thing, follow-up scene with Rhaenyra. Her husband comes in and basically recommits himself to her. And... well, instead of saying, thank you, let's try and make it proper air together, she goes to Daemon and they have their conversation with Daemon where, yeah. So, okay, there are so many ways to interpret this because basically she's saying, marry Daemon, we'll get married, we'll, together we'll be really strong and everything like that. And Daemon just says, like, I can't marry you until your husband's dead.
She's like, I know.
She says, I know. At first, I was thinking that Rhaenyra is committing to just cold-bloodedly kill her husband, which is really, really dark. Turns out, in some of the subtext here, she also might be in on the fact that he's not really dead. It's not the show's great. Like it's so clever in making it ambiguous and giving you clues here and there, because now this is going to be something that people will just discuss, and it could be interpreted either way pretty fairly. What was your thing? Do you think it was?
I felt that she didn't know.
That's what my first impression.
It would lead to claims later, and she wouldn't want anything to challenge her authority. Mm-hmm. And so I felt that she was in the dark about that ending scene.
I thought that as well, but it's these lines here where she says, fire is a prison, okay? The sea offers an escape. And that's her saying that. And the husband does escape in the sea. And so people think that this is her telling Daemon how to get rid of the husband. I think that's a fair enough, thing. The thing is, though, people, Daemon does still murder someone to get the false body. And so whether she's killing the husband or knowing or not, she is consenting to murdering someone in cold blood to fake the death.
To get
which is still real. Like, so this is Rhaenyra crossing a line into willful, intentional, cold-blooded murder. Alicent wasn't expecting the former hand of the king to be murdered when she said she was shocked that the guy went that far. And look,
she was mortified.
Mortified. And I'm not saying it's good in any measure that then she just accepts it and doesn't try and seek redress for them or anything like that. It's still bad, but it's not as bad as I feel Rhaenyra is doing here.
Whether she's trying to get her
husband killed
or somebody else.
Perfectly fine to get someone else murdered.
Either way, she would do whatever she wants to get what she wants.
Yeah, and so this is her crossing a very serious line and makes her darker. Like, I was already on Alicent's side in terms of Alicent being, you know, following tradition, doing her duty and all those things, and Rhaenyra has always been kind of self-centered, bad in relationships, doesn't treat other noble people well. She's been pretty selfish consistently. And the fact that she didn't do her duty and didn't commit to it I tried even more, and then had illegitimate children and other things like that. They have a way to avoid pregnancy in this world, and, you know, she could have had her fun and still not had illegitimate children, right? That would really destabilize the realm, have these children born in a horribly difficult situation.
However, she was obviously trying to stabilize her claim to the throne by having heirs.
Well, the other thing is, right, couldn't she have had her fun with someone that looked a little bit like the husband then? It's not that hard. Like, she chose a guy that almost ensured their kids are not going to look like the dad. But
I suppose most of the ones that look like him aren't there where is it, Westeros or whatever.
And I know it's because she actually liked Sir Strong. They had a relationship and they probably even loved each other and things. There are things that she could have done to avoid so many issues, right? And
you can kind of understand some of it. Like, you know, she is trying to cement her claim to the throne by saying, look, I do have heirs. It's not going to go nowhere and whatever, even though they're, you know, her heirs and not her husband's.
Well, I mean, it gets to the point that she's willing to off her husband or get rid of him, right? And what she could have done is just tried all these years to have a child with him and have got nowhere. Okay, you've already shown you're willing to get rid of him and marry Daemon, which is the, you know, someone that you seem to have been wanting to marry in the first place. And I have a feeling they're going to have children together and things.
Yep, and she has a chat with her little
yes, man. Yeah. And he says, you know, his line, if it's an eye you want to balance the scales, I am your servant. And instead of being horrified this time, she says, basically, no, but I might need your services in the future and your discretion.
And, like, she's smart enough to know if that kid loses an eye, it's getting straight back and pointed to her. Like, nobody else would care that he loses an eye.
And, like, it's interesting. When I say I like a character, it's not because they're a good character. This guy's an interesting, conniving character. I like how he's done. He's really intriguing, right? And so, yeah, I really like him as an interesting character and just this ruthless guy. Okay, so she says, the Valerians are of the sea, but you and I were of fire, I think she says, made of fire. So, okay, it could be interpreted either way. This could just be her saying that she is a terrible match with her husband.
And that they both were for their spouses who were both Valyrian.
Valyrian.
Like, we're a better match. We are of the same mate.
And so, you know, this not necessarily is her saying, you know, let's send him off into the sea. Daemon literally says, I could not marry you unless Laenor was dead. And she says, I know. And the thing is, this is why, all right, pendulum in the opposite direction, that it might just be she's wanting him cold-blooded murder. There's no one around listening, okay? And so what's the need for speaking in subtext when they clearly open to speaking plainly about this? And by her saying, I know, that's a more open kind of thing, saying he needs to die, not her saying, we'll fake his death and let him escape. Because there's no guarantee that he would agree to that anyway.
Yeah, and you could just be tipping your hand off.
Exactly. I mean, and the fact that he does agree to this, to just leave, we don't get told how that was set up. at the very least, it had to have been organized between Damon and the guy he hires, or it could have been just the guy he hired.
I felt it could have been the guy he hired because he already had a relationship with the husband.
Damon is the one that kills the false body. So there's a scene where Damon actually kills someone. I'm pretty sure it's Damon. We'll double check.
No, because it's the husband and this guy that are having the fight.
Well,
and
before.
It skips.
There's a scene where Damon sneaks up on someone and kills them. See, when she said the sea offers an escape, she might have been referring to their marriages, that they're, by being married to the Valerians and everything like that, it's just not as strong, together we will burn.
That's kind of how I felt.
And so it's not such a clear interpretation to her saying, we'll let Laenor escape to the sea. It can be interpreted because they were both married to Valerians and that was weakening them. And it might have just been
we're not as strong with being watered down.
Exactly. I couldn't tell if this guy was the squire at the beginning of the episode.
Yes, he's the one that's been attached to the husband, and that has been getting all his privileges. Being the
I couldn't recognize him. I thought it was someone else.
No, he's the one that even walked him out of the water at the start. Okay. So he is approaching the lover.
Mm-hmm. A quick death, a one with witnesses. So already Damon is saying murder.
Yes, he's already saying I.
Could you interpret that, subtext that is saying we want it to appear as a quick death? But the thing is, though, he doesn't describe that. If I heard that, it's just this is Damon asking him to kill the other guy.
Yeah.
One with witnesses, though, because
they didn't quite accomplish that when they had.
Because this is the thing.
That's where I feel like they took matters into their own hands.
This could be the interpretation that it's the plot, because why would you need witnesses if the body is clearly, Laenor? You wouldn't need, he's just dead. But I guess to take away any suspicion that it was them, they would need... Okay, so it can be interpreted either way. Witnesses that it was this guy that did it would, take away suspicion that it was Rhaenyra. But wouldn't
help him if he's going to be the one getting paid and leaving. Mm-hmm. So witnesses to the death, saying that he was the one that died. So here's her perspective on ruling.
Okay, this is the guy that gets killed. It's this random guy, and that's Daemon killing him. So... I don't know who it is, but it's someone who has dark skin that might, look like Laenor. And he snaps his neck.
Yeah, and this to me made no sense. Well, no, I guess this is where it implies that he's involved in a whole lot.
Daemon is implicitly involved in the false death. Okay?
Yes.
So, but we don't know if Rhaenyra is. Rhaenyra's words could be interpreted either way. But you can't interpret it any other way because of this, that Daemon, And so it could be that Daemon is choosing not to murder. Because look, this guy is his passed away's wife's brother. Yep. And so if he feels he can achieve what needs to be done without murdering him, he'll murder someone else. They're still murdering someone, this poor innocent guy.
Well, he's already murdered his wife, so he doesn't shy away from murder.
Yeah, but it's still even if they try and say Rhaenyra was in on the plot on the fake death, she's in on this. She's happy for someone to. So it is dark. It is really dark. She crosses a line massively. And then, they set it up that there's a fight, go get help, and then they come back. And man, I'm so sorry for their parents. They just lost the daughter and now their son. But it turns out he's actually not dead. He is escaping with his boy toy, essentially. And they're really alive. There is an issue that, and then they get married, Daemon and Rhaenyra.
And it seems like it's not a public one because there's not a lot of witnesses.
It also seems like not much time has passed. And so they said they're not afraid of people speculating because getting married right after the death makes it feel like it was, beneficial for their desires. Kids are there, and so they're part of it. That's him still alive, shaved head, hide his identity. Oh, there is a problem. There is a problem with this, okay? And I really hope the show is aware of what this means. This guy still has a dragon. The dragon, if he's supposed to be dead, someone else should be able to bond with that dragon. But because he's still alive, his dragon shouldn't bond with anyone. The big fight against the Crab King? I think he's riding one of the dragons. He has a dragon, okay? And so either that was someone else and I'm wrong, or there might be a very clear way for people to figure out he's not actually dead because no one would be able to bond with the dragon anymore. In fact, the dragon should probably fly off and chase him Because we saw that the big dragon chased the sun now, that is following his rider. So, have to see what happens in the next episode. I hope the writers are aware of this and they account for it.
Was the sun riding the dragon? Because you didn't see him on the ship.
Oh, he was clearly on the ship because they were leaving and the dragon is following.
But he might have been riding the dragon to follow the ship.
Maybe?
Because they don't show him. So
okay, good point.
That. He might not have been following him.
But then you wouldn't be able to still bond with the dragon.
I guess they could always put it down to the dragon's fussy. Like, it's not necessarily going to bond to the first person.
Well, yeah, maybe. Look, I hope they at least address it.
If he does have a dragon, that would be interesting.
But that's it. That's House of Dragons episode 7. What an awesome episode. I loved that. Did you have any other final thoughts on it?
No, just that we got, like I mentioned earlier, we got to see a little bit of perspective of what Rhaenyra really wants to be as a ruler. She's just like, I just don't want to be a tyrant.
But then Daemon says you have to be a tyrant.
Yeah, and so she's trying to come to terms of what kind of ruler she wants to be.
But that seems to be an admission that she's willing to be a tyrant now. I mean, she's okay with it. Again,
she's okay being extreme if she gets what she wants. I'm
with Alicent. She's willing to murder, all right? And yeah, even if she didn't murder the husband, someone still got murdered. She's willing to murder, right? I'm Alicent. I'm Team Green all the way. So that's Team Black and Team Green.
Oh, is that what they are?
Yeah. Oh, side black, yeah. Let us know what team you're on in the comments below. Because one of the, even if you disagree with our interpretations, that's one of the things I love about this show. There's enough meat to be able to have different interpretations, such fun discussions like this, which just is to the show's credit. Best show on TV, best episode so far. Let us know what you thought in the comments below. Look forward to reading them. And as always, stay on watch.
Shadow of the Conqueror is the breakout debut novel by Shad Brooks.
Truly incredible. I absolutely loved this book. Honestly, it's one of the best books I've ever read. S. Keith Hall.
Now, Shadow of the Conqueror is coming to you in an epic graphic novel adaptation with the incredibly talented art of Mike S. Miller. This will bring its dark, confronting story to fans and new readers alike in another beloved format, making the story more accessible than ever before, and enabling current fans to enjoy it in new ways.
I was engrossed in the tale of the Conqueror. I laughed, cried, growled with anger, and shouted with joy. But also during this entertaining ride of emotion, I came away with mental growth and new perspective on the human condition. Andrew Johnson.
Mike is a 28-year veteran of the comic book industry, famous for his work on DC Comics' Injustice series and George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones-related graphic novels.
I've read so many novels I've lost count, fantasy genre or otherwise, but in my opinion, this is one of the best. Seaton 425.
The author of Shadow of the Conqueror, Shad Brooks, has been a fan of both comic books and Mike's work for many years, and is thrilled to be working with him to bring this graphic novel to the highest standards possible.
I don't typically listen to audiobooks multiple times, but this is my 4th time through and I'm loving it more each time. Highly recommend for anyone who loves fantasy action stories. C. Barker.
The book will be separated into 4 graphic novel volumes. This first one, entitled Enemies of Self, has 48 pages of stunning art visualizing the amazing and unique world of Everfall with some of the best work Mike has ever done.
It must be admitted that there was a large amount of skepticism when this book was recommended. However, a story that would leave the reader hooked and begging for more was not something that was expected. The overall plot and flow of the story was simply phenomenal. I highly recommend this book. It is filled with action, humor, love, hate, science, and the psychology of the human condition. History Rewriter.
Separating the book into 4 volumes gives great opportunity to adapt more of the work and even add new content not seen in the original novel. Far from being given secondary regard as a token adaptation that doesn't accurately represent the source material, the graphic novels are being made with the intent to form a crucial part of the Everfall story, revealing fascinating aspects to the characters and world not found in any other format.
Powerful and gut-wrenching. I laughed, introspected, winced, wondered, cried, and will be revisiting this world. Michael Larson.
At the time of launching this Indiegogo campaign, the graphic novel is completed and ready to print. This is not to fund the creation of the graphic novel, but to give you the chance to get your hands on it. We will be able to place the print order as soon as this launch campaign ends, and you will get the graphic novel in your hands much sooner without needing to wait for the graphic novel's completion. With the launch of the graphic novel, I'm very excited to announce that during this Indiegogo campaign, I will be releasing a refined version of Shadow of the Conqueror as a second edition version. This is not the sequel, but a more refined and polished version of Shadow of the Conqueror, with an incredible new cover made by Chris McGrath. The second edition will at first be an exclusive in the Indiegogo campaign, where you will be able to get your hands on a limited edition version of the second edition novel with the graphic novel covers, which will not be available ever again once this launch campaign ends. And in addition to this, we've gone even further and made premium, high-class, display-quality, collector edition, leather-bound versions of the second edition novel and graphic novel, both of which will be available for a limited time during this launch campaign.
Way better than I thought it would be. Bought because I watched Shad on YouTube. I never thought his book would be as good as this is. Kinda blown away. Jevin Curley.
With special collector edition covers and limited Everfall merchandise, this is your one and only chance to secure these special versions of this phenomenal epic fantasy graphic novel. Just because the mainstream comic book industry is declining in both quantity and quality, doesn't mean we still can't make great graphic novels for those who love them and attract new fans to the format. Please share this Indiegogo campaign with as many people you feel would be interested and who would love to enjoy such a visually stunning and emotionally riveting story as this Chronicles of Everfall, Shadow of the Conqueror, Volume 1, Enemies of Self.